If there is no self, what is reborn? Rebirth and impermanence explained. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, who am I, really? It's a question that we all face at some point in our lives. A question that reverberates through the deepest chambers of our hearts, challenging the very essence of who we think we are. You see, as we move through life, we hold tight to the idea of a permanent self. It's as if we're always searching for that solid identity, a core, a soul, a central I that remains unchanged, no matter what happens around us. But what if this sense of self is only an illusion? What if, as the Buddha so profoundly taught, there is no fixed, unchanging self at all? Imagine, just for a moment, letting go of everything you think you know about yourself. What would remain? Would you still exist, or would you simply dissolve into the fabric of the universe, no longer the you've identified with all your life? Buddhism, in its infinite wisdom, asks us to face this very question. The Buddha's teaching of anatta, or no self, is not a mere philosophical concept. It's not something to simply accept because it sounds profound. No, it's an invitation to dive deep into our own experience, to peel away the layers of attachment and ego, and to see ourselves as we truly are, not fixed, not permanent, but flowing, evolving, and ever-changing. In this journey of understanding, we discover something incredibly liberating. The absence of a permanent self opens up the possibility for true freedom. Freedom from the constant cycle of craving, of wanting, of clinging to an identity that doesn't even truly exist. When we understand that there is no solid I at the core, we also realize that we are not bound by the past or dictated by the future. Each moment becomes an opportunity for renewal, a chance to act with kindness, with wisdom, and with love, not from a place of fear, but from an open heart, aware of its interconnectedness with all beings. Imagine walking through life with this understanding, seeing your thoughts, emotions, and experiences as they are temporary, impermanent, and not yours to possess. It's a radical shift in perspective, one that invites peace into the very core of our being. You no longer need to fight with yourself. You no longer need to cling to an identity that is fleeting. Instead, you can flow with life, embracing its beauty and its challenges with equanimity and compassion. As we explore the deeper meaning of rebirth in the context of Buddhism, we come face to face with another powerful teaching, samsara. The cycle of birth, death, and rebirth is not some distant event that happens after we die. It is happening right now in every moment. The Buddha's teachings show us that each thought, each action, each decision we make is a part of this endless cycle. But rather than seeing this as a burden, we can approach it as an opportunity for growth, for awakening. What is reborn if there is no permanent self? The answer lies in the flow of our actions, in the seeds of karma that we plant in every moment. Our intentions shape our experiences, and they continue, like a river that flows, even after we have passed from this life. The beautiful truth that emerges from this understanding is that we are not doomed to a fixed destiny. We have the power, right here and now, to change the course of our journey. By understanding the impermanence of all things, we can break free from the cycle of suffering and cultivate a life of wisdom, compassion, and peace. In this exploration of anatta and samsara, we come to see that the essence of rebirth is not something distant or separate from us. It is happening in the here and now, and in each of us in every decision we make. Rebirth is not a grand event after death. It is a continuous process of becoming. As the Buddha teaches, the key to breaking free from this cycle is not to escape it, but to understand it, to see clearly the truth of our impermanence, and to awaken to the boundless love and wisdom that resides in each moment. So, as we embark on this journey together, I invite you to let go of your preconceived notions. Let go of the idea that there is a permanent self to protect or defend. Open your heart to the possibility that life in all its forms is constantly unfolding, and in each moment you have the power to choose how you will respond. Will you respond with love? Will you respond with kindness? Will you respond with the wisdom of the Buddha? The path to liberation is not an abstract idea. It is a living, breathing practice, one that unfolds with each step we take. And as we walk this path, let us remember, you are not alone. We are all part of the same flow, the same process, and together we can awaken to the truth of our interconnectedness. What are we really made of? In the grand view of life according to the Buddha, we are not a solid, permanent self that exists independently of everything else. Instead, we are a fluid, evolving collection of processes, a stream of ever-changing elements. The Buddha taught us that the idea of a permanent self is merely a mental construct, a label we attach to our experiences to make sense of the world around us. But when we dive deeper, we discover that the self we hold onto so tightly is an illusion. Buddhism presents us with 5 key elements, known as the 5 aggregates: Rupa, Vedana, Sanyanya, S a letter 1E45, KH a macron, R a, and Vijnana. These are the components that come together to form what we call ourselves. However, unlike the Western idea of a fixed, unchanging self, these aggregates are dynamic, fluid processes that arise, exist, and pass away in every moment. Let's explore each of them with an open heart and mind. Rupa, the body. The first aggregate is Rupa, the body. Our body is often the first thing we associate with ourself. But when we think about it, we realize that our bodies are not static. They are constantly changing. Our cells regenerate, our skin renews, and our organs undergo transformation over time. Think of it as a river, always flowing, never remaining the same. We might look in the mirror and see a face that feels familiar, a body that feels like me. But this body, too, is a process, constantly shifting and evolving. The Buddha's teaching encourages us to see the body not as something fixed, but as something that flows and changes moment by moment. The body does not define us. It is simply one part of the greater whole. Vedana, feelings. Next, we have Vedana, our feelings. But in Buddhist philosophy, this goes beyond the common emotional states we recognize. Vedana refers to the raw sensations we experience, whether pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, in reaction to external stimuli. It is how we feel when we hear a beautiful song, when we taste something sweet, or when we experience discomfort. But our feelings are ever-changing. One moment we might feel joy, the next sadness, and then perhaps indifference. We often mistakenly believe these feelings are our true selves, thinking, I am angry or I am happy. But in reality, these feelings are transient, impermanent, like clouds passing across the sky. When we identify with them too strongly, we fall into suffering because we fail to recognize their impermanent nature. The Buddha teaches that true peace comes from understanding that feelings, just like the body, are not permanent and do not define who we are. Sanyanya, perception. Then we have Sanyanya, perception, the way we interpret the world. Perception is how we recognize and label what we encounter. We might see an object and recognize it as a chair. We might hear a sound and immediately identify it as a car horn. Our perceptions, too, are not fixed. They are shaped by our past experiences, cultural conditioning, and the moment's circumstances. But just as with feelings and the body, perceptions arise and dissolve. When we perceive something as good or bad, we are attaching a layer of judgment to a fleeting experience. This creates suffering because our perceptions are constantly changing. What was once pleasant can become unpleasant, and what seemed bad might later be seen as neutral or even beneficial. The Buddha teaches us to notice our perceptions with mindfulness, understanding that they are not absolute truths, but conditioned, impermanent responses to the world around us. S, a letter 1E45, KH, a macron R, mental formations. The fourth aggregate is S, a letter 1E45, KH, a macron R, mental formations. This includes our thoughts, intentions, desires, and habitual tendencies. Mental formations are incredibly powerful because they shape the direction of our lives. They include everything from the small decisions we make every day to the larger patterns and tendencies that govern our actions. These mental formations are deeply linked with karma, the intentional actions we perform with body, speech, and mind. S, a letter 1E45, KH, a macron R, is like the seed we plant in our mind, and over time that seed grows into habitual behavior. The more we feed these formations, the stronger they become. Yet just as with the body, feelings, and perceptions, these mental formations are not permanent. They too are fluid and subject to change. They are not a fixed me. Understanding this gives us great freedom. If we can recognize that our habits and tendencies are not set in stone, we can begin to change them. We can choose to cultivate kindness, compassion, and mindfulness, and watch those seeds grow in our hearts. Vijnana, consciousness. The fifth and final aggregate is Vijnana, consciousness. This is the awareness that experiences all of the other aggregates. It is the ever-present backdrop to our thoughts, feelings, perceptions, and physical sensations. But even consciousness is not permanent. It arises in dependence on conditions. Consciousness is not a self that resides inside us. It is a continuous process, changing moment by moment. Think of consciousness as a river of awareness, constantly moving, constantly shifting. It doesn't stay fixed in one place. It depends on what we are experiencing. The consciousness we have when we are eating is different from the consciousness we have when we are meditating. And as we sleep, our consciousness shifts again. Consciousness is not the me at the center, but the awareness that processes everything that arises. Understanding the self. When we look at these five aggregates, body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, we begin to see something profound. There is no fixed, unchanging self at the core of it all. Our experience is not a static entity, but a flowing, dynamic process. What we think of as me or I is simply a collection of ever-changing elements. The Buddha taught that clinging to these impermanent processes causes suffering. We hold on to our body, our emotions, our thoughts, and our consciousness as if they are me or mine. But in doing so, we miss the deeper truth. When we let go of this attachment, we begin to see clearly. We stop identifying with the body that ages, the emotions that fluctuate, the thoughts that come and go. Instead, we embrace the fluidity and impermanence of life, finding freedom in the flow. This realization doesn't mean that we cease to exist. Rather, it means we free ourselves from the false belief that we are a fixed, permanent self. We are not a thing but a process that, once understood, allows us to live with more compassion, wisdom, and peace. When we see that everything is changing, we can let go of fear and embrace the present moment. Why does rebirth happen? The concept of rebirth in Buddhism is often misunderstood, especially in cultures steeped in the belief of a permanent soul or essence that migrates from one body to another after death. Many imagine it as a mystical event, where a soul departs from one form and enters another, carrying the weight of identity from one lifetime to the next. But the Buddha's teachings offer us a different perspective. Rebirth in Buddhism is not a magical or mystical event. It is, rather, a natural, ongoing process, unfolding every moment right here, right now. The cycle of samsara, the endless wheel of existence, includes the constant cycle of birth, aging, death, and rebirth. But this cycle is not just about future lives. It is also the process of becoming in the present moment. We are not separate from samsara. We are living it every day. The stream of our consciousness is in constant flow, and what we think of as rebirth is the continuation of that flow, from moment to moment, from thought to thought, from one breath to the next. The role of craving in rebirth. So how does this wheel of samsara continue to turn? The answer, as the Buddha taught, lies in craving tanha. Craving is the root of all suffering. It is a deep, insatiable thirst that drives the cycle of birth and death. This craving is not just the desire for material things or pleasures. It is a craving for security, identity, and even for non-existence. We crave comfort, stability, and control. We crave to hold on to our sense of self, to protect the identity we have carefully constructed. We even crave escape from the inevitable impermanence of life itself. Craving fuels our actions, and each action leaves behind a karmic mark. In Buddhism, karma refers to the intentional actions we perform with body, speech, and mind. But unlike the simplistic notion of karma as some cosmic system of rewards and punishments, the Buddha's teaching points out that karma is simply cause and effect. Every intention we hold, every action we take, leaves an imprint on the fabric of our consciousness, and these imprints shape the future experiences we encounter. Every time we act out of craving, whether it is a desire to possess something or an aversion to something we fear, we are planting seeds in the fertile soil of our mind. These seeds grow into patterns of behavior, thought, and perception. Over time, they shape our reality and influence the course of our lives. This process of planting seeds is what drives the cycle of samsara, the endless continuation of becoming. It is not a soul that carries these seeds from life to life, but the energy of craving driven by past intentions and actions. Karma, the seeds of rebirth. Karma is often misunderstood as a form of cosmic justice, as if it's a ledger keeping track of our good and bad deeds, rewarding us when we're good and punishing us when we're bad. But the Buddha's view of karma is much more nuanced and liberating. Karma is not an external force, but a natural law of causality. Every thought, word, and action creates a ripple effect that shapes the present and future. It is not about moral judgment, but about the reality that every action is a seed that will eventually sprout into a new experience. Think of karma as a garden. Every action you take, every thought you have, is like planting a seed. The seeds of intention, whether driven by craving, hatred, or ignorance, will grow into habits, behaviors, and perceptions that shape how you see and interact with the world. And just as a seed grows according to the conditions it's planted in, your karma grows according to the circumstances of your life, the people around you, and the choices you make. The crucial thing to understand here is that there is no permanent self carrying these seeds. There is no unchanging I that moves through lifetimes. What persists is the flow of consciousness, shaped by craving and the imprints of karma. When we act out of attachment or desire, we continue to fuel the cycle, feeding the flame of craving that drives the wheel of samsara. The illusion of the permanent self. This leads us to one of the most profound insights of Buddhist philosophy: the absence of a permanent self. When we talk about rebirth in the context of Buddhist teachings, it's important to understand that it is not the same self being reborn. The self, as we understand it, is a collection of changing processes, a flow of thoughts, feelings, and experiences. It is not a permanent, unchanging essence. In this light, rebirth is not about the continuation of a singular soul or identity from one life to the next. It's about the continuation of processes, the karma that we create, the craving that we indulge, and the patterns of mental and emotional responses that we cultivate. Rebirth is a flow, a stream of consciousness and intention that arises from the past and continues into the future. Just as a flame moves from one candle to the next, it is the cause and effect, not the self, that carries us through the cycle of samsara. The key to breaking free from this cycle lies in recognizing the nature of craving and the impermanence of the self. When we begin to see that our desire for security, identity, and permanence is the very fuel that keeps the wheel turning, we gain the power to step off the wheel. By letting go of attachment, by breaking the habit of craving, we can begin to end the cycle of rebirth, not by escaping it, but by seeing through its illusions. Liberation through understanding. The Buddha's teachings invite us to look deeply at the processes that drive our lives. The cycle of birth, death, and rebirth is not something that happens after we die. It is happening in every moment of our lives. Each time we act out of craving, we are planting the seeds for future rebirths, future experiences, future suffering, and future joy. But this understanding also brings with it immense freedom. When we see the process of craving and karma clearly, we can choose to stop feeding the cycle. We can begin to cultivate actions rooted in compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom, rather than actions driven by fear, desire, and attachment. Each moment becomes an opportunity to plant different seeds, seeds of love, understanding, and peace. And as we cultivate these seeds, we can step off the wheel of samsara and into the freedom of the present moment. Rebirth is not a mysterious event that awaits us after death. It is a living process, unfolding right here and now as we make choices and cultivate actions. By understanding how the cycle works, we can break free from it, creating a life filled with freedom, peace, and the awareness that we are not bound by the past or the future. We are free to live fully in each moment, planting seeds of wisdom and compassion that will shape a better world for ourselves and all beings. The process of rebirth. Rebirth, in the Buddhist view, is often misunderstood as a grand, mystical event that occurs only after death. Many of us think of it as a soul leaving one body and entering another, a dramatic shift between lives. But the truth that the Buddha reveals is far simpler, and at the same time, far more profound. Rebirth is not some distant event that waits for us after death. It is happening right now, continuously, in every moment of our lives. Every thought we have, every emotion we feel, every action we take, these are forms of birth and death. This cycle is not just something that happens at the end of life. It is the fabric of life itself. The Buddha described the mind as a stream, citta santati, a flowing, continuous stream of consciousness that is never static, never fixed. It is constantly changing, shaped by the actions and experiences of the past, interacting with the present and creating the conditions for future experiences. The mind is not an unchanging self, but a dynamic process, one moment flowing into the next, forever in flux. Just as a river never flows the same way twice, our minds are not the same from moment to moment. Each thought, each feeling, each perception is a part of this ongoing flow. The process of rebirth is not separate from this flow. It is the flow itself. We are reborn moment by moment, not as a fixed self, but as a new collection of thoughts, emotions, and actions. We are constantly shaping and reshaping ourselves through the decisions we make, the way we react to life, and the mental habits we cultivate. The patterns we form through these actions, our habits of mind, continue to create the conditions for future experiences. It is the ongoing movement of this stream of consciousness that constitutes rebirth. The role of karma in the process. Central to the process of rebirth is karma, the law of cause and effect that governs not just our actions, but our thoughts and intentions as well. The Buddha teaches that karma is not some external force or a judgment imposed by the universe. It is simply the natural unfolding of our actions. Karma refers to the intentional actions we take with body, speech, and mind, and these actions have consequences. But these consequences do not just affect our future lives in a distant sense. They shape the very next moment of our experience. When we act, speak, or think in ways driven by craving, aversion, or ignorance, we are planting seeds that will grow and shape our future experiences. These actions do not disappear. They leave behind imprints on the mind. In Buddhist terms, this is the creation of mental formations, the habits of thought and emotion that accumulate over time. These mental formations, in turn, create the conditions for future moments, causing us to continue to be reborn in ways that perpetuate the cycle of suffering or samsara. But there is hope in this. Understanding how karma works gives us the freedom to change the way we are reborn. By acting from a place of mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, we can begin to plant seeds that lead to a future of peace and liberation. The flow of our consciousness is shaped by these actions, and with each moment, we have the opportunity to choose how we will act and how we will shape the future. Citta and the continuity of consciousness. When one life ends, whether it's the end of a physical life or the end of a moment, the Buddha teaches that there is a final moment of consciousness known as citta. This is the death mind, the last mental state before the next stage of becoming. In the case of death, this final moment of consciousness is shaped by our deepest karmic tendencies. What we have cultivated throughout our lives, the habits of mind, the emotional attachments, the mental formations, shape this final consciousness. It is as if the last seed planted in the mind ripens just before it passes. But this is not the end. From the final moment of consciousness, a new moment arises, known as Patisandhivanana, or the linking mind. This new moment of consciousness is not the same as the previous one, but it carries forward the seeds planted by previous actions, just as a flame passes from one candle to the next. The mind does not pass on a self or a soul. It passes on the seeds of karma, the results of our past intentions and actions. This continuity is not controlled by an external force. It is the natural unfolding of cause and effect. So, in reality, rebirth is not a single event but a continuous process of cause and effect, where each moment of consciousness arises from the previous one, shaped by past actions and mental formations. This process is neither controlled by us nor by some external power. It simply is. The unfolding of our actions and intentions, moment after moment, perpetuating the cycle of samsara or the wheel of suffering. Breaking the cycle of rebirth. The Buddha's insight into the nature of rebirth offers us a way to understand how we can step off the wheel of samsara. If the stream of consciousness is a flow of momentary birth and death, then the key to breaking the cycle lies in understanding that we are not bound by any fixed self. There is no permanent I that is being reborn. Instead, we are a process, a collection of changing thoughts, emotions, and actions. The more we identify with the idea of a permanent self, the more we fuel the cycle of craving and attachment that drives the process of rebirth. The path to liberation is through wisdom and mindfulness, understanding the impermanent, fluid nature of our existence, and choosing to act in ways that cultivate compassion and awareness. When we stop clinging to the idea of a permanent self, when we stop identifying with our desires and attachments, we stop feeding the craving that perpetuates the cycle. We begin to make choices that lead us toward freedom, choosing kindness over anger, understanding over ignorance, and peace over agitation. In this way, rebirth becomes a process of spiritual growth and transformation, not one of endless suffering. The more we understand the true nature of our mind and our actions, the more we are able to break free from the cycle of birth and death, suffering and craving. Rebirth, in the Buddhist sense, is not about the continuation of a soul, but about the continuation of mental habits, the patterns we create through our actions. By transforming those patterns, we can transform our experience of life and ultimately step off the wheel of samsara. So, each moment becomes an opportunity to choose a new path, one that leads to liberation, one moment at a time. Through mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, we can shape the flow of our consciousness and step out of the cycle of rebirth, embracing a life of peace and clarity. Rebirth happens right now. In the traditional view, rebirth is often seen as something distant or mystical, an event that happens after death. It's a concept that carries with it ideas of a soul departing one body and entering another. But the Buddha's teachings invite us to reconsider this. According to Buddhism, rebirth is not a singular event that waits for us after death. It is happening right now. Every moment of our existence is part of this ongoing process. Rebirth is not just a metaphysical concept, but a very real and tangible experience that unfolds in the present moment. Each thought we think, each emotion we feel, and each sensation we experience is a form of birth and death. Consider, for example, how a thought arises in your mind. It appears, stays for a moment, and then fades away. A moment ago, you didn't have that thought, but now it exists, only to vanish shortly after. The same applies to our emotions. Happiness, anger, sadness, and fear. Each emotion arises, takes hold, and then dissipates. Even our physical sensations come and go in a similar pattern, constantly in flux. In this way, our minds are like the ocean, where each wave represents a thought, feeling, or experience. The wave rises, crests, and then falls away, giving way to the next wave. This continuous cycle of arising and passing away is rebirth in action. The Buddha described this process as karma in motion, the unfolding of actions, thoughts, and reactions, shaping our moment-to-moment experiences. Karma in this context is not some distant force that affects us only in the future or in the next life. It's the natural law of cause and effect, acting out in every moment of our lives. Every intention we have, every action we take is a seed planted in the soil of our minds. Over time, these seeds grow, influencing our future thoughts, emotions, and experiences. But just as seeds grow and transform, so too do our minds and lives. The Buddha's teachings show us that we are not defined by the habits of the past, but rather by the potential to change, to transform, and to choose differently in each moment. The continuity of rebirth. This idea of rebirth happening in each moment is a profound realization, because it highlights the impermanence of all things, including ourselves. We often live our lives as if we are fixed beings with a predetermined fate. We identify with our habits, our personality traits, our past experiences, and we believe that they define who we are. We say things like, "I am just this way," or "I will always be like this." But when we examine the teachings of the Buddha, we see that this identification with a permanent, unchanging self is an illusion. Our self is not fixed. It is a process, a flow of consciousness, constantly changing, constantly shifting. Each day we are reborn. Each moment we are given the opportunity to create a new mental state, to transform our thinking, to reshape our habits, and to act with a new sense of awareness. Our thoughts are not our identity, our emotions are not our identity, and our past actions do not determine our future. Rebirth is not just about some distant event in the afterlife. It's about the continuous possibility of growth and change in our present lives. The Buddha's wisdom shows us that we are not bound to the same patterns of behavior, the same emotional responses, or the same thought processes that we have had in the past. The freedom of momentary rebirth. What does this mean for us in our daily lives? It means that no matter how entrenched we feel in our current state, whether it's a bad habit, a negative emotion, or a limiting belief, we are not stuck. Rebirth happens right now, and with each passing moment, we are free to choose a new path. When we truly understand that we are not fixed beings, we realize that we have the power to change, to grow, and to break free from the past. This is liberating because it removes the weight of a predetermined destiny and replaces it with the freedom of possibility. This realization is not just an intellectual exercise. It is an invitation to live differently. We can choose to act with more compassion, to respond with greater wisdom, to cultivate peace in our hearts rather than anger, to choose understanding over judgment. Each time we make a conscious choice, we are reborn into a new way of being. We are not bound by the past or defined by our former actions or experiences. Instead, we are free to begin anew, over and over again in every moment. Rebirth and the power of choice. At the heart of the Buddha's teachings is the understanding that every moment is a new beginning. In every moment, we are creating the conditions for the next moment, planting the seeds of our future experiences through our actions, thoughts, and intentions. If we understand this, we realize the immense power we have to shape our own destiny, not through control, but through awareness and mindfulness. The more present we are in the moment, the more conscious we are of our thoughts, feelings, and actions, the more we can direct our energy toward creating a life of peace, kindness, and wisdom. But this awareness takes practice. It requires us to observe our minds with compassion, to notice the patterns that keep us stuck, and to gently steer our lives in a new direction. As we practice mindfulness and cultivate compassion, we begin to see how deeply interconnected everything is. The thoughts we have about ourselves and others shape the world we experience. The actions we take, no matter how small, have ripple effects that shape the future. In this way, rebirth is not just about our personal transformation, but about our impact on the world around us. Each moment we act with love, with wisdom, and with mindfulness, we are not just rebirthing ourselves. We are also contributing to the rebirth of the world, embracing the impermanence of rebirth. When we begin to see rebirth happening right now, we also begin to understand the impermanence of all things. Nothing stays the same, not even for a moment. Our emotions, our thoughts, and our experiences are constantly in motion, constantly changing. This can be disorienting at first because we often want stability, something to hold on to. But the Buddha teaches that impermanence is the truth of life. And when we embrace this truth, we are liberated from our attachments and fears. By letting go of our attachment to the way things have been, we free ourselves to embrace the way things are right now. We don't need to be controlled by our past, and we don't need to live with fear of what the future holds. We can simply be present in the moment, aware that this moment, like all moments, is part of the cycle of rebirth. This awareness brings peace because we realize that we are not our past. We are not our thoughts, our feelings, or our actions. We are the awareness that witnesses them, and we are free to choose how we will respond. In every moment, we have the opportunity to choose a new path. Rebirth is not something that happens after death. It is something that happens in every breath, every thought, every action. And with this understanding, we are free to step off the wheel of suffering and into the peace and wisdom of the present moment. The path to freedom. The Buddha's teachings offer us a profound path to liberation, one that doesn't ask us to transcend the world, but instead to understand it deeply and embrace it as it is. At the heart of this path is a simple yet radical insight. Everything is in constant motion. Nothing lasts, not our thoughts, not our feelings, not our experiences. Each moment is an opportunity for rebirth, for transformation, and for awakening. The key to freedom lies in letting go of our attachment to permanence. We often identify ourselves by our thoughts, our emotions, and our experiences. We think, I am my anger, or I am my sadness, or I am the sum of my past. We believe that these fleeting moments define us, but in reality, they are just passing clouds in the sky of our consciousness. When we cling to them, we create suffering. The Buddha taught that it is not the experience itself that causes suffering, but our attachment to it, our desire to hold on to something that is inherently impermanent. By understanding that everything is in constant flux, we can begin to break free from the grip of these attachments. We stop identifying with our thoughts, emotions, and experiences as if they define who we are. Instead, we begin to see them for what they truly are: transient, impermanent, and constantly changing. When we recognize the impermanence of all things, we can develop a deep sense of peace and freedom. This is the path to freedom from the cycle of rebirth. Rebirth is not just about the next life. It is about the rebirth of our thoughts, emotions, and actions in each moment. If we are constantly attached to the past, constantly clinging to our old patterns of thinking, we will continue to perpetuate the cycle of suffering. But if we can learn to let go, to embrace the natural flow of life, then we can break the cycle and step into the freedom of the present moment. Mindfulness and meditation, tools for clarity. The Buddha taught us that the mind is like a muddy pond. In its natural state, it is clouded and disturbed by the turbulence of our desires, our fears, and our attachments. But just as a pond becomes clear when the water settles, our minds too can find clarity through mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to our thoughts, feelings, and experiences without judgment. It is the practice of being fully present in the moment, aware of what is happening inside and around us, without getting lost in the story our minds like to tell us. Through mindfulness, we begin to see the impermanence of all things. We notice how our thoughts rise and fall like waves on the ocean, how our emotions come and go like clouds in the sky. We start to see that we are not our thoughts or emotions. We are the awareness that witnesses them. In meditation, we deepen this awareness, training our minds to settle into the present moment. As we sit in silence, we begin to observe the flow of our thoughts and feelings without attachment. We don't try to push them away, and we don't cling to them. We simply allow them to arise and pass away, like leaves floating on a stream. Through this practice, we learn to cultivate equanimity, the ability to remain calm and balanced no matter what arises in our minds or in our lives. The fleeting nature of thoughts and emotions. When we practice mindfulness and meditation, we begin to recognize the fleeting nature of our thoughts and emotions. Every thought that arises is impermanent. Every feeling, no matter how intense, is temporary. We can observe how one moment we may feel joy, the next moment sadness, and the next moment indifference. And each of these states is just that, a state, not a permanent part of who we are. This realization is liberating because it gives us the freedom to let go of identification with our mental and emotional states. We are not our anger, our fear, or our anxiety. We are not our joy, our excitement, or our contentment. These states arise and pass away, but we, the awareness behind them, remain constant. We are the stillness in the midst of the storm, the sky that holds the passing clouds. As we deepen our practice, we begin to understand that rebirth is not something to fear or avoid. It is part of the natural flow of life. Every moment is an opportunity for rebirth, not in some distant future or after death, but right now. Every thought, every emotion, every action is a form of rebirth. But instead of being trapped in the cycle of clinging to these experiences, we learn to embrace them as they come and go. We learn to flow with life rather than fighting against it. Equanimity, the heart of freedom. When we understand the impermanence of all things, we naturally cultivate equanimity, a deep inner balance that allows us to remain undisturbed by the ups and downs of life. Equanimity is not indifference or detachment. It is the ability to be fully present with whatever arises, without being swayed by it. Whether we are experiencing joy or sorrow, success or failure, we remain steady, knowing that these experiences are fleeting and do not define who we are. Equanimity is the natural result of understanding impermanence. When we stop clinging to our thoughts and emotions, when we stop identifying with them, we free ourselves from the cycle of suffering. We no longer allow external circumstances to control our happiness or peace of mind. Instead, we become the masters of our own experience, grounded in the present moment and at peace with whatever arises. The path to true freedom. The Buddha's path to freedom is not about escaping life or avoiding suffering. It is about seeing life clearly, understanding the impermanence of all things, and learning to live with wisdom, awareness, and equanimity. When we let go of our attachment to the past and stop identifying with our thoughts and emotions, we open ourselves to the freedom of the present moment. Through mindfulness, meditation, and the cultivation of equanimity, we can break free from the cycle of suffering and rebirth. We can live fully in the present, embracing each moment as it comes without clinging to it or pushing it away. This is the path to true freedom, the freedom to live with an open heart, to love without attachment, and to face life's challenges with courage, clarity, and peace. A final lesson: understanding impermanence. At its core, the Buddha's teaching on rebirth is not some esoteric mystery or an abstract belief in an eternal soul that moves from one life to another. It is far more practical, far more immediate. It is about understanding impermanence, anicca, and how this truth shapes not only our lives but also our very minds. The cycle of rebirth, in the Buddha's view, is not a distant event that we must wait for. It is happening right now. It is unfolding in each breath we take, in every thought that passes through our minds, and in each fleeting emotion that arises within us. This is a liberating realization. The nature of rebirth is tied to impermanence, and impermanence is not just a philosophy. It is the undeniable truth of existence. Every experience we have, every moment we live through, is like a wave that rises and falls. We cannot hold on to it, no matter how tightly we try. Our bodies, our thoughts, our relationships, everything is impermanent. The Buddha showed us that this truth is not something to fear, but something to embrace. It is not a curse, but the key to freedom. When we grasp the reality of impermanence, we begin to see that rebirth is not a grand event that awaits us after death. Rebirth is happening right here, right now. Every thought that arises is a form of birth, and every thought that dissolves is a form of death. Every emotional state that we experience, whether fleeting joy or deep sorrow, is rebirth in action. Each time we make a choice, whether it's a small decision or a life-altering one, we are recreating ourselves in that moment. The power of awareness. What does it mean to understand impermanence in the context of our own lives? It means that we stop clinging to the illusion that anything is permanent, including our sense of self. We are not fixed beings with a permanent essence, but a process, a dance of thoughts, feelings, and actions that arise in the present moment. And like everything else, we, too, are impermanent. By recognizing this, we develop the wisdom to let go of attachment. Attachment is born out of the desire to hold on to what is fleeting, our thoughts, emotions, bodies, and experiences. This attachment causes us suffering because we mistakenly believe that these things define who we are and that we can control them. When we understand impermanence, we stop identifying with these temporary states. We stop clinging to the idea of a permanent self. Instead, we embrace the truth that we are always in flux, always changing, always being reborn. This understanding shifts our perspective on life and suffering. Instead of clinging to the past or fearing the future, we learn to live fully in the present. We experience the full richness of each moment without trying to trap it or hold on to it. The past is gone and the future is yet to come, but in this moment we are free. We have the power to choose how we respond, how we engage with the world, and how we create our next moment. The practice of impermanence. Understanding impermanence is not just a mental exercise, it is a practice. It is about training our minds to see life as it truly is. In our daily lives, we encounter impermanence every moment. Our bodies grow older, our relationships shift, our emotions rise and fall. The weather changes, the seasons pass, and even our thoughts are in constant motion. Through mindfulness and meditation, we can cultivate an awareness of this truth. We learn to observe our thoughts and feelings as they come and go without attaching to them. When a thought of anger arises, we can simply notice it and watch it dissolve, understanding that it is temporary. When a moment of happiness arises, we can enjoy it, knowing that it too will pass. Through mindfulness, we train ourselves to observe the fleeting nature of our experiences without clinging to them or rejecting them. This practice helps us develop equanimity, a balanced mind that remains calm and steady, regardless of external circumstances. When we understand that everything is impermanent, we become less disturbed by the ups and downs of life. We accept the flow of life as it is, with all its changes and uncertainties. And in doing so, we free ourselves from the cycle of craving and suffering, embracing rebirth in every moment. As we walk the path of understanding impermanence, we come closer to true freedom, not from some external force, but from the limitations imposed by our own minds. The Buddha's teachings on rebirth show us that freedom is not something that comes in the future, not something that can be attained after a certain event. True freedom is something we can experience now in every moment by simply realizing that nothing lasts. The cycle of rebirth, our constant recreation of self, is not something to be feared. It is, in fact, something to embrace. Every moment we have is an opportunity for renewal, for growth, for transformation. Through understanding impermanence, we step off the wheel of suffering and live in harmony with the world around us. We let go of the burden of attachment and enter the flow of life with grace, compassion, and awareness. The true essence of liberation, as the Buddha taught, is not about escaping life, but embracing it fully, with an open heart and an open mind. When we understand that all things are impermanent, we realize that we are free to create a new life with each moment. We are not prisoners of our past, our thoughts, or our identities. We are free to be reborn again and again as beings of wisdom, compassion, and peace, living the wisdom of impermanence. So the final lesson of the Buddha is clear. Understand impermanence, and you will understand the true nature of your life. You will see that you are not a fixed identity, but a living, breathing process, a flow of thoughts, feelings, and actions that arise in the present moment and dissolve into the past. This understanding will allow you to live more fully, more freely, and more authentically. Rebirth is happening right now, in every breath you take, in every thought you think, in every emotion you feel. The key to freedom is not in waiting for a distant future, but in embracing the present moment, knowing that everything is impermanent, and with that knowledge, living in peace. This is the path to liberation, the path that the Buddha walked and taught, and it is available to us all right here and right now.